May I have your attention, please? Good evening.
You're listening to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. We thank you for tuning in and hope you enjoy another exciting episode of our show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. It is the last show of 2020, and man, we're glad to get rid of this year because it's been a very interesting one, to say the least. So, what are you going to do in the new year? You know, people come up with their New Year's resolutions and all of those things. It sounds good, but then, is it really good? Can you make those things happen? Can you put some things into practice that maybe you should have been doing the entire time? I'm not sure, but you know what? We'll find out because the first of the year before you know it now. In some news here, I see that just came across the wire the House vote to increase stimulus checks to $2,000, substantially boosting payments for most Americans. They sent that bill to the Senate. I know that the president signed the earlier version, which gives everybody like $600 or something like that. But the House on Monday approved giving Americans weathering the coronavirus pandemic $2,000 stimulus check, substantially boosting payments for the $600 check that was set to be given out as a part of the COVID-19 relief package that President Donald Trump signed to the law actually Sunday evening. The bill passed by a vote of 275 to 134. It needed the support of 2/3 of House members present, read in such a looking at already Kevin McCarthy, Republican out of California, last week, unanimous consent request by Democrats to increase $2,000. The measure will now head to the GOP-controlled Senate, where its future remains unclear. Senate Republicans have for months stressed over increased government spending and are likely to oppose the measure despite Trump's demands. Now, vote on this measure will force conservative lawmakers into an uncomfortable position. Either cave on their long-held objections or snub a key demand of the president in the last weeks of his tenure. The vote Monday marked a test for Republicans who have opposed more government spending, even as Trump to be boosted to $2,000 per adult and $4,000. Congress' nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation estimated that raising the payments to $2,000 per adult will cost nearly $464 billion. The division between congressional Republicans and the president comes at a moment when Trump is counting on conservatives to help him over the results of the election. Now, next week, Congress meets to formally count the votes of the Electoral College, a day that is expected to draw protests as Trump hopes Republicans will object to certificates in some states in what would certainly end in being a failed effort to overturn election results. The boost checks were a direct demand from Trump, one of several policy items that led the president to heavily criticize the package, despite negotiating the legislation with Congress as part of a large government spending package. He called the legislation a disgrace, which launched fears that the president might sign the bill. His criticisms and delay in signing the legislation resulted in expanded unemployment insurance expiring for millions of unemployed Americans, delaying their next check. And Trump also comes a slap in the face to many Republicans who voted in support of the measure after his administration gave it the green light. Now, Trump ended up signing the $900 billion COVID-19 relief package, which was attached to a $1.4 trillion government spending bill Sunday evening to avert a government shutdown. He warned the measure back with revisions, though House Democrats have already said that they would not take up the president's request. The process, known as a rescission request, would temporarily free certain funds highlighted by the president for 45 days. If Congress does not take up the changes, the funds released after that period. As president, I've told Congress that I want far less wasteful spending and more money going to the American people in the form of $2,000 checks per adult and $600 per child, Trump said in a statement Sunday. I'm signing this bill to restore unemployment benefits, evictions, provide rental assistance, add money for PPP, return our airline workers back to work, add substantially more money for vaccine distribution, and much more. Now, Republicans on Capitol Hill caught between a vote to approve the stimulus they thought would be popular and a president who appeared bent on undermining the measure after approved, appeared to breathe a sigh of relief after Trump signed off on a package. I'm glad the American people will receive this much-needed assistance as our nation continues battling this pandemic, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Turkey Neck, said in a statement Sunday evening. Now, the relief package provides up to $600 in direct stimulus checks to millions of Americans, and it extends unemployment benefits, as well as a program intended to help small businesses retain their employees during the coronavirus pandemic. The bill was the fifth passed by Congress since the pandemic began nearly a year ago, and a result of intense negotiations in recent days as lawmakers and their staff worked on a compromise that drew criticism from the far right for being too costly, and from the far left, who said it didn't go far enough to help the American people. Now, that dispute and the lawmakers came as the coronavirus pandemic went a march across the United States, dramatically increasing infections and also deaths. Along with this, Republicans are similarly in a tight spot on another measure Monday as they consider overriding the president's veto of the annual National Defense Bill. Now, that bill is actually a $741 national security package. It'll raise troops' pay, direct the purchase of weapons, and set military policies. The president voiced opposition to the measure largely over two key provisions: an inclusion that will rename certain military bases that honor Confederate military leaders, and Congress's refusal to include language that will strip social media companies from the protections they enjoy under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. The many House Republicans expected to join Democrats Monday in overriding the president, marking the first time the chamber will have one of Trump's vetoes. That's very interesting because, it's time to change those bases that were named after those Confederate leaders. It's time. It's way overdue. And the protections of the social media companies, I'm not understands that also protects Mr. Twitter fingers. That, he's off on his own and he does a little bit too much sometimes. But anyway, I see my co-host is here, my host is here, I'll put it like that. So we go get ready to start this show off. It's the six-man Dean Geronimo. I know I've talked about 5 or 6 good minutes, but welcome to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. And from NJ to NC, I'm in the studio with my right-hand man, Mark Lee. So, Mark, tell me what's good in your neck of the woods, my brother.
Well, I was glad to see that I might be getting some extra money, but even though when I've talked to my friends, they don't hold your breath. You might get it in March, you might get it in August, you might get it in September, but there's no telling when you might actually get the actual check. Now, I'm hoping that they're wrong and that the check is on its way and that I'm going to get it, sooner versus later, because I just checked my bank account, the bank card, and it was looking kind of pitiful. So it was looking at me. Actually, I think the bank card might have been laughing at me because I went to one of the websites and I typed in my code, and before I could even look at the number, I think I heard laughter. So I think the computer was laughing at me like, why are you even bother looking at this money? You ain't got none in here. I don't know why you trying to look at me. It's the same amount that was in there yesterday when you looked. It hasn't changed. So you ain't spent none. You ain't brought none in. It's the same amount as when you looked a few minutes ago. So why are you trying to pretend like there's money in here? This is your bank. and the bank automation telling you that I'm going to be laughing at you, because that's a running joke that I used to say about my ATM card as well, that I'm convinced that a couple of times when I would put the ATM card in the machine, the ATM card would be laughing at me like, why is he putting me in the card? He knows he ain't got no money. He didn't have no money yesterday when he put me in there. Did he put any money in me? No, he didn't put no money in me. So why does he think there's any money in here now?
Hey, man, I think that's everybody's account right now, man. It's one of those things where it's like, what are you looking at me for? And why are you asking me to show you these numbers? It's not changing. So, don't keep stressing what's not there. And you know what? You're not the only person, man. It's a lot of folks that are going through it right now. I guess one of the bigger questions that I had is, you're arguing about a $2,000 check. But at the same time, are you still giving aid to these other countries? Because if you are, then you know what? Y'all are really doing us dirty right now, man. Really doing us dirty.
Still giving money to other countries. Still giving aid to other countries. I heard what you said earlier because I was backstage listening, and I agree. He's worrying about what Twitter and Facebook are going to allow to be said or not said. When he's the main one on Twitter and Facebook. Every time I turn around, he's saying something else silly on Twitter or Facebook. How long has he been telling us that there was a fraud in the election and that he won and that he'd been cheated out of his victory? And he's been saying that, I know, since at least the few days after the election in November. So we're talking about a month and a half. He's been saying this, and he keeps going to the courts. The courts keep laughing at him, including his own courts. They're kind of like my bank. They keep laughing at him and everything. So I don't know why he keeps going back to the well when the well keeps telling him there's no water in it.
You know what? I think he likes playing in the sand. And that's the only thing I think of, because it's just one of those things where, dude, you are the one person that needs to be protected by some of the silly things that you say. And you don't want them to, okay. Yeah, he doesn't understand that part.
He's totally lost. He's sitting there going, I came up with a new expression, I'd used it on the round table. You will hear it if you got your WeTransfer of the round table and Zach show earlier today and everything. But I have a new expression for the low minimum wage that too many folks are still having to this day and time, and we in the year 2021, to a number of other things that he has done and a number of other things around the world. And my new favorite expression is that folks are being stuck on stupid. So this is my new expression that I am using left and right. So the minimum wage is stuck on stupid. His politics is stuck on stupid. So if you know folks that are stuck on stupid, just tell them to get off of the stuck on stupid gravy train, because it ain't doing them no good. It ain't doing nobody else any good. So they just need to get off of the stuck on stupid gravy train.
The West train is coming through for some people, and it has no brakes, it has no reverse. In fact, all it does is travel in a circle, so it can be quite confusing for those who are actually permanent riders of the SOS train.
Permanent riders.
Yes. What do we do with them? Well, it's the end of a decade. Some people will argue that it is the beginning of a decade, but when you count in groups of 10, you start with 1. You don't say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you start with 1 and you end with 10. So we're getting ready to close out a decade right now, and hopefully moving into the new decade, some people will realize some things matter, some things don't, but you still can't be that dumb that you are insensitive to what you see or hear. So we'll find out.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out what's going on in that. You know, I know both you and me are sports fans. So, you know, my fantasy team did horrible and everything this year. At least the 76ers did start off with 2 wins, so I am glad for Doc. And he moved up to the number 10 list. He is the 10th winningest coach of all time. He's got a long way to go to Red Auerbach, but I do think he'll catch 9 and 8 because he signed like a 4-year contract. So even if he don't make it to the playoffs or something like that, I think he's still got good shape to make it at least to 8 or 7. He might have a long time to get down to like the true legends down there around 1 or 2, but he is number 10 in all-time wins with his victory a couple of days ago and everything. But on a sadder note, and I know that people have to be concerned about their health and about things that go on in their health, but the Duke basketball team, women's, decided that they are done with the season. They're like, we're not playing anymore. We've got a couple of cases. We got some other things going, and I think they had a vote. So the women's team at Duke campus said, that's all right, we're done. We're not having it.
I can't be mad at them, man. You know what? Sometimes you have to look at what's best for you. And while it may not please everyone else, but you know what? It doesn't matter. And it's to the point now when people start taking care of themselves and not worrying about trying to please others, we just might get somewhere.
We might get somewhere, you know, but I just heard something today that actually troubled me. I was doing the other streaming podcast earlier today. Had Nubian Red, who is raising some money for her son, who has got a rare condition, and is actually doing a fundraiser for the son on the 31st. So in a couple of days, she's going to be doing this fundraising event. It's a virtual event and all of that, but and it's lots of money that they need. I think it's like, you know, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars and everything. So I do wish them luck as they try to raise this money and everything. And then I had another woman on that was a cancer survivor. So had those conversations going on and everything, but definitely that was just some of the things that were happening earlier, and that's just I share that with our audience here in case they want to go back and check those amazing conversations out. They were just talking about some very important things and all that. But one of the things that came up in that conversation, that's the point I was going to make, I knew it would come back to me and everything, was that I'd heard that, you know, we're glad that we've got vaccines. I know a lot of people are concerned about whether they're going to take the vaccine, whether they're not going to take the vaccine, and how the vaccine will be impacting them and all of that. But it is my understanding, I knew we were up to 3 strands, but it seems to me that I just heard today, or maybe one of these people on the show told me, that we might be up to a 4th strand. So even if we have got a vaccination for the first 2 or 3 strands, does that mean that there's not a vaccination for the 4th strand, and now we've got to get a vaccination for that as well, or is the vaccination for the first 3 going to impact the 4th? So, you know, these strands keep popping up left and right. So like I said, who knows how many strands we'll have by the end of this pandemic, but apparently we've moved up to another strand of this pandemic.
But is it strands because nothing has been done? You know what I'm saying? Like, not sure. You know, I mean, I can't tell you, and some people are going to equate it to the flu like they did at the beginning. You know, oh, it's just like the flu, and then it proved that we're a little bit tougher than the flu. So now what? You know? It's going to be interesting to see. But I tell you what, I'll go ahead and take a vaccine rather than try to fight it by myself.
Well, that's true, because, I mean, you fight it by yourself, then you pretty much know that you probably are not going to win that war because you fight it by yourself. I mean, but I am also hearing people thinking that we have to do more natural living kind of stuff, like do better with our health, do better with our exercise, do better with our diets. And I do agree with something that I heard a friend of mine say, and I can't remember whether it was on TV or it was just in a regular conversation or whether it was on one of the podcasting programs, but they were talking about if you pick up a can of soup or you pick up a can of the different things that you buy from the store, how many ingredients are on that can that you have no clue what they are. And I had to think about that because I was sitting there going to myself and everything, and I was thinking to myself of all of these different things that I've got, and actually the cupboards are kind of bare right now, but I'm just going to grab a pumpkin thing right now, and I'm going to grab the pumpkins and everything, and it says that this pumpkin has got, let's see, within the pumpkins, it's got, okay, there's gluten-free. Well, this looks like it's pretty much just the pumpkin, so I don't see a lot of other ingredients. So it's a canned pumpkin, so I don't see a lot of other things onto that particular thing. But I'm sure that if I picked up one of the other products that people have in their houses, I'd probably be sitting there going like, now what exactly is this stuff that y'all are giving me and everything? I mean, it sounds great, but what exactly is it? Like I said, a friend of mine sent me something from Louisiana, and this looked basically it's natural as well. So it says rice, onions, bell peppers, red pepper, paprika, caramel color. Don't know that I need the color. Spices and garlics. And then it's got dehydrated milk, soy cream, and wheat flour. So most of that stuff, I can buy that. I can get that. I can get with that. That's stuff that's common and it, should be just natural and all of that. So I can get with that. I can even get with this grape that I got. But in the grape it says Concord grape, corn syrup, fruit pectin. I have no idea what a pectin is. Citric acid, sodium citrate, and it says no artificial flavors or colors. But I would have to look up what a PECTIN is. I mean, somebody's listening right now and they're probably like, Mark, you should know what a pectin is. But I'm sorry, I don't. So like I said, that is one that I am confused by and everything. But I'm sure that in a more full kitchen, they would probably be having all kinds of stuff like in their cereal and their other cans and going there like, I have no idea what that is or why I'm even putting that in my body and everything. Like I said, I just picked up a can of a soda that I got a couple of days ago, and it says filtered water. I can live with filtered water. It says high fructose corn syrup, honey, citric acid, natural flavors as opposed to artificial flavors, ginseng root extract. So, yeah, this Arizona tea looked like it wasn't in that bad of a shape. But I'm sure that if I looked at my Dr. Pepper, it would be a whole other case and a whole other can of worms. So much so that guess what? Dr. Pepper didn't even put their ingredients on here.
You know what?
Yes, they put them at the bottom.
That's too much reading, man. Like I tell people, man, I eat for taste, man. I'm not
exactly.
Like some people will go ahead and read all that stuff, and then it's like, well, you can't eat nothing. So, no.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I said it's good to be healthy, but I do agree that some people do get a little carried away with their healthiness, and they want to, only eat. Like I heard one person that said that I think they were going to eat according to the colors, so that I guess they were going to do like the 4-color diet, so they had to have a certain amount of red food and a certain amount of green food and a certain amount of whatever the other 2 colors were. But it seems like their diet was going to be based on the colors and everything, and I'm sitting there going like, I was with you. I'm sitting there going, so you mean I got to go to the store, and instead of just figuring out what I want because of the flavor, I got to be figuring out, well, the celery is green, the orange is orange. Do I get the red tomato, or do I get something else that's red? So that's almost like a child.
Yeah, that's too much, man. That's too much
work.
For me. That's a lot. Like I just nah. You're going in there color coordinated, but like you come out with a 64 pack of crayons or something, man. Like, nah, that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, I know what tastes good, and that's what we're gonna roll with.
We're gonna roll with what tastes good.
Yeah, like people's like, oh well, you got to eat this and you got to do this. And remember, years ago, they used to beat up cigarette smokers, and they used to say, why would you do that? You're killing your body. But now everybody's on the cigar tip. Like, hey, man, I'm not going to say nothing, but if you going to the gym and working out 5 days a week, smoking cigars 6 days a week, it is what it is, but don't jump on me if I choose to do something else. In fact, you know what? In the new decade, man, just worry about yourself. It's all good that I'm trying to impart this knowledge on you, but nobody asked you for it. So until somebody asks you for your opinion about their health or their wellness, you know what, y'all? Do us a favor, man. Keep that to yourself. Nobody's listening to you. And maybe because nobody's listening to you, you feel the need to get attention or whatever, but if don't get mad when you offer something and you get a response like, okay, and nobody asks you for further information or whatever. Hey, some of us are halfway through life, and we are pretty comfortable with where we are. Some people are not. For those that are not, they're going to make the changes that they see necessary. If someone comes and asks you for your assistance, then by all means, give them the assistance they're requesting. But otherwise, keep it to yourself, man. Do that in the new decade.
Yeah, but you got a lot of folks that want to sit there and try to dictate to folks when they don't even have their own house in order and things of that nature. Because you got to have your own house in order, I think, before you can get other people's houses fixed and everything. I've even, we've talked on the past about the social life and dating life. I know you've got that lovely wife of yours, and I'm still in that single category. But I can tell you that that's one of the big hang-ups that I've got with not all women that I've dated, but some women that they want to sit there and trying to change you. And I don't mind constructive criticism. I think we all can accept constructive criticism. But, but one, put it in the context of it being constructive criticism, and two, make sure that you've got some of your own house in order before you sit there trying to change my house.
Exactly. A woman cannot tell a man how to be a gentleman, and on the flip side, a man can't tell a woman how to be a lady. So there's certain things that you're looking for, and if you don't find it in a certain person, then that's okay. Keep it moving until you find that which you're looking for. But to try to change an individual, you're wasting your time, because they'll entertain you for a little bit, but after that little bit leaves, watch out, because it's about to get critical.
About to get critical and real messy, because folks will be sitting there going like, "That you didn't tell me you were gonna be this way or that way," and you sitting there going like, "But you didn't tell me you were gonna be your way either." So, like I said, it's a two-way street, and folks have to understand that it's a two-way street, and they need to understand that as we move into 2021, because that's one of the things that I think that folks need to understand is the 2021. Hopefully, it's gonna be better than 2020. I know one of the things that, and I'm gonna throw it out to you. I'm hoping that one of our musical buddies and an artist is gonna call, because I reached out to them a couple of days ago, and they both said that they would call, but I think they said they'd call about 7:30 or so. So hopefully the doorbell will ring after a while. But one of the things that Zach came up with on one of his shows was just a concept of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Anybody that remembers the old Westerns know that that's kind of like a Clint Eastwood kind of line and everything along that line. So while we wait to hear from these folks, and I may jump off after a while if I don't hear from them and see if I've gotten any text messages from them or calls. But while we're waiting to hear from folks, what would you consider your good, bad, and ugly for 2020, and what are you hoping to see in 2021?
Good, I'm still amongst the living. Bad, we got a pandemic that's out here. Ugly, we got people that need help out here in this country, but they're hindered by two parts of Congress. They did override the veto of his defense bill, but I mean, what about the folks that really need it, man? People are out here hungry. People are out here struggling, man. Can't go to work in some places because the jobs are shut down. And that's the ugly part. So
I would agree with you.
Hopefully in the new decade, we'll start voting in legislators that make sense, that have sense, that aren't afraid to just go along and get along, and that'll do things that'll benefit the people.
I hope so, because we got to get some real leaders in there. I mean, we got a real leader in Biden, and some of the people that he's put in office. I've actually been impressed even by the young Native American woman that's going to be running up the Interior Department and some of the other ones he's put in place. But, we also got to make sure that the stupid people don't sit up there and throw roadblocks to kind of the way they did under Barack's administration and under a couple of other administrations that I can name as well. So we got to make sure that we get our lobbying still in place, because a lot of times folks will get comfortable. They'll get comfortable with the fact that they won whatever the victory is, and then they'll be like, I won, I don't have to do anymore. Guess what? You still got to do your part, because there are still people that are on the opposite side that with the correct pressure will go ahead and vote correctly, but you still got to put some pressure on them and tell them that if they don't vote correctly, that you have no qualms with getting them out of office as well. Like if you got one person out of office in 1600 and they don't want to act right, that you have no qualms with letting them know that they can bounce as well, that their job is not a lifelong job and that they are not guaranteed it for the rest of their life. So you have no problem with voting them out, as the old saying goes.
Well, we need to, and it's overdue, man. All this craziness about you got both parties and they're yelling, vote the line, but how is the line going to benefit me? And I asked that question as an independent voter, so, when people come and say, "Oh, you don't have an allegiance," no, I don't, because I don't believe in blindly following anybody. I don't give a damn who it is. Just because they say, "Oh, I'm a Democrat," or "Oh, I'm a Republican," doesn't mean you got to necessarily follow them. As you see, some of these people will do some real interesting things once they get in the office. So, we have to be mindful of, do they speak to your better interest, or are they speaking so that they can get something in their better interest? And you got to be able to discern between, which one is it. And eventually their actions will tell you. But, just because someone's a member of my race doesn't necessarily mean they got my better interest at heart. So we got to be real careful about just selecting people on just because. Just because will be the reason why you're suffering. So you gotta, come out of that blindly following thing and get better with that. Hold people accountable. If someone says that they're going to do something, then they need to be held accountable. They do not get any extra points because they came out and promised something. And like you said, they get in there and it's like, well, I did my part, so now I'm good. No, you're not. You're even held to, more heat is put to your backside, because now those things that you said that you wanted to do and you had to do, now you're going to do them, because you're going to be held accountable for what you did. And that's not only on the national level, that's on the state level, that's on the local level, that's in the organizations you belong to. All of those different things. If you are an officer in an organization, be sure and be careful not to make a promise, because once you're called on it, you're going to have to come through with it, and you're going to have to learn the hard way. So figure out which way you want to roll. Be honest with people. If you can't do something, tell them you can't do it. And if they ask why, tell them why. I mean, there's no harm in that. I can't do this because... And they either going to be mad and respect it, or they're going to be mad and respect it. Because at that point, you've given them everything and you haven't held anything back. You've told the reason why. You told why it cannot be done. And maybe out of that meeting, there may be some brainstorming and some ideas that come through with something that you might be able to do. So, don't try to hold all the secrets, as they say, because nothing's secret. Once the little hole gets in the cup, all the water comes out. So you got to be sure to be truthful in all your dealings, and life will be easier for you. It is what it is.
Definitely. It is what it is, and these folks got to just understand that and understand what's going on. But unfortunately, folks don't seem to have that mindset. So I don't get why folks don't have that mindset. They just get stuck on stupid, as the old saying goes, and they just got to get off of that being stuck on stupid and all of that, and share a little bit more of their true wisdom. Because I agree, if that water is got a leak in it, guess what? Unless you plug that leak up, it's going to keep on leaking. So you got to figure out a way to plug that leak up, or actually just know that you're going to not have a full cup if you don't fix that leak.
Yeah, and what are you going to do when you got water all over the floor and you don't have a mop to get it up? Now you got some stuff on your hands, and now somebody's still holding you accountable. But it gets a little worse because you either withheld information or you just outright lied. So how do you handle it?
Yep, they just got to understand that. They got to understand what they should be doing. But a lot of times folks don't have the most common sense that they should have. And sometimes I'm amazed that the folks don't have just basic common sense. You just want them to have some real basic common sense in life. But, sometimes common sense isn't as common as we would like to think it is.
Not at all.
It's like common sense had disappeared, and folks are going like, common sense? What's that? I don't know how to do common sense. That's a mystery term to me.
Yeah, it's a mystery term to a lot of folks. Because sometimes, like the old folks used to say, common sense ain't so common sometimes.
That's real true. Sometimes you be going there and going like, well, why isn't it common? Why are we not having common sense and all of that? We should be having just normal common sense, but some people do not get that in the least bit. They're going like, I ain't got no common sense. I ain't got no sense whatsoever. So, as a matter of fact, I'm still trying to figure out what my whole mindset is and what I'm even doing on this world. But sometimes folks just get caught up in that kind of stuff versus things that they should be dealing with, which is dealing with the real reality of their lives and all of that. But some folks don't even want to deal with that. They just kind of like want to see whatever they can think about their lives and not be putting it in a positive way. And I think I see that we've got a caller, which I believe is my artist friend. So I just saw that he popped in, and I'm so glad that he popped in. So I see that the artist is called, and we need to learn about our artist, buddy, and see what's going on in the wonderful world of art, because he is a masterful artist. So let's bring in Mr. Joseph and see what he's got to say about his artwork while I try to grab maybe a glass of water or something. And there was a little bit of a scratch in the throat there.
I hear that. So like, we're going to bring him in and find out what's going on. All right?
All right. That sounds wonderful.
Thanks for calling Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. You are now on the line. Tell us who you are and where you're calling from.
Yes, sir. My name is Joseph Sand, and I am calling from Randleman, North Carolina.
All right.
Well, I appreciate you calling from Randleman, Joseph. As I said, I reached out to you because you are one of the people that is always talking to me about what's going on in the art world, and I've actually known that you've done in the past when we could do those festivals, because I know I would sometimes see your work at like Centerfest and Eno and a number of other places, but unfortunately this year a lot of that work was done virtually. So I guess one of the first questions I've got to ask you is, how are you maintaining as an artist in this day and time that we're living in? We're in the middle of a pandemic, and that cannot be easy for an artist. As a matter of fact, I was hearing a study by the NEA that said that while restaurants have been facing a difficult time, the artists of the world, be that performing or visual artists, are probably even doing worse in this pandemic in terms of survival, and are even doing worse than the restaurants in some categories. So how are you making it as an artist, and what are you doing to conquer this madness that we're in the middle of?
Well, thank you for asking. Yeah, it has been a struggle. This year, so started off, we had all of our shows booked, and we were excited getting ready for that, and then obviously that all happened. So what we have done, we've adapted, and we've done a lot more online sort of events. So typically in a normal year, we'll do 3 kiln openings here at the Pottery. So that's what we make. I'm a potter and make sculptures. I make large sculptural things that are, considered ceramic, but it's also pottery. But we do 3 of those a year typically. We have a 40-foot long kiln that we fire, and we have everyone come out, and they pick out their pottery or the sculptures and, are happy to take them home and all as well. But this year we have gone ahead and put everything online, and it's just been a completely different way of going about it. So 3 times a year now we have done everything online instead of. So what we'll do is we'll fire the kiln, put maybe 50% of the inventory on, because it just is so much to, photograph and price and all that. So we've done that, and we've had a decent response from it. The main thing is we aren't selling anything like the big, $3,000 sculptures typically online, but, people are willing to part with $100 to $400 pretty freely online. So, that's what's getting us by right now.
Sounds like that's a great thing happening. Now, 2 things that you're doing that I think are wonderful, and I do want to talk about one of the events, because I love this event that y'all came up with for 2021, so I want to get into that in a little bit. But before getting into that, if you can tell our listeners, and we do have listeners from around the world, what got you into the wonderful world of pottery and art in general? Were you the person that, as a kid, was always into art, or did art kind of find you later in life? Or what got you into pottery, and what made you decide to become a potter?
Well, I've always loved doing stuff with my hands. So, I'm making art and building stuff. I'm an avid builder also. I love construction. But when I was a kid, I remember I grew up in Minnesota, and there's a lot of clay there also. And I remember making a cube out of clay, and kind of that is a very, very fond memory of my first sort of experience with tactile and clay. And since then, I went to art school as a sculptor. I actually lived in Italy for a year and England for a year, and I was studying more, sort of fine sculptural things, Renaissance, Baroque period. But then in my time in England, I became really interested in pottery, and that brought me to North Carolina to do a 3.5-year apprenticeship. And that's where I fell. I turned into a potter, and now this is our 11th year that we've been running a successful business in pottery.
Well, it sounds like a great thing that y'all are doing. I feel sorry for you being in Minnesota. I'm a diehard Vikings fan, and we managed to lose several games and everything, so we got eliminated from the playoffs. Once again, I've been a Vikings fan since the Fran Tarkenton days, so y'all, once again, the team from Minneapolis has broken my heart. Once again, unlike my partner in crime, Baltimore Ravens team, which looks like they will be headed to the playoffs, we will be sitting there watching on TV and everybody else.
Yeah, same here. I'm a Vikings fan and also a Panther, so it was a double whammy for us this year. It wasn't a good year for our football.
Yeah, that is my second team, the Panthers being the hometown team. So you are right. This was not a good year in football whatsoever. So we'll have to figure out somebody else to root for in the playoffs. Maybe we'll have to root for Dean's Raven team or one of those other teams that's out there and everything. But, yeah, our folks are not doing all that well.
I'm going to probably get some grief from people, but I'm a big Tom Brady fan, so I'm going to root for whoever he's playing with.
Understood. Yeah, he seems like he's been doing a good job. I was actually a little bit mad at Tom Brady because I also did fantasy football and made it to the playoffs, got eliminated in the first round, and two players went off this week. Alvin Kamara and Tom Brady. So they had like about 70 points. So if they had those points last week or in the first week when I had them playing on the playoffs, I could be in the championship as well. But they decided to show up after I've been eliminated. That's the only problem with fantasy football. They decided to show up after you don't need them.
That's one thing I've never been able to get into. It's too much for me.
I know that's right. But one thing that you are into, and I just think it's a wonderful thing, and I'd love to hear how you came up with this idea, is a lot of people are talking about the negativity of 2020 and all of that. So you have actually come up with this idea where you are having folks either plant a seed or an actual seed or a metaphysical one and asking them to nourish it and watch it blossom into something wonderful in 2021. So I saw that on one of your email threads and things along that line. So how did that come about, this whole concept, and could you talk a little bit about your thoughts around that?
Yeah, well, it does. It's kind of a two-way thing. I mean, we're very avid gardeners and flower people, and this year has been just kind of crazy. And I always look forward to spring when new growth is coming, and we just pray that we have positivity and, because I think obviously we all are kind of aware it's a pretty rough few months here coming up our way. So hopefully, springtime, we've got some new beginnings, and, that's sort of where all that stemmed out of. Thank you for bringing that up. That's really I'm happy you caught on that.
No, I definitely caught on to that, and like I said, I saw that y'all were also offering a code around Buy 2020, and I know that that's kind of the motto of a lot of folks. So it sounds like that if folks go to the website, and if you would tell folks what the website is, it sounds like they go to that website that y'all are offering 25% off of the remaining inventory through January 1st. So they've only got a few days if they use that code which says Buy 2020, and I know that that's an attitude that a lot of folks are having about 2020. They wish it had happened in the first place, and now that it's gone, they don't want it to come back.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you for bringing that up, Mark. Yeah, we're JSS Pottery. It's josephsandpottery.com. Again, it's JSS Pottery or josephsandpottery.com, and we're doing 25% all remaining inventory. We have $20 pieces all the way up to I think maybe $3,500, $4,000 sculptures, and everything is 25 off. And fortunately, people have really been taking advantage of this. It's only been going for a couple of days, and we've moved quite a bit. We sold a really nice larger sculpture tonight just by online. So I mean it's sort of a nice way to be done with this year, and hopefully like I'm saying, and praying for a much better 2021 because we all need it.
No, there's no doubt we definitely need a better 2021, and I definitely agree with you on that and everything. Now, Dean, my business partner here, has got a lovely wife that he considers his business partner, and it sounds like you've got that in your partner, Amanda. So was she always involved in art, or did you bring her into the art world? And can you talk to Dean about the importance of having that life partner with you? Because I know he's a big supporter of his wife and his wife of him, but it sounds like y'all have a similar type of relationship. So I'd love to hear more about how she's connected to your business and also whether she's an artist herself and the nature of y'all's connection.
No, thank you. Yeah, we met in college, and she's definitely not an artist by any means. She's really good with math and numbers, so that is her role in the business. She's a fantastic bookkeeper and marketing and numbers. She does all the taxes and allows me to not have to worry about that. And she's wonderful with words. So that was her words that you caught on that email. She's a great writer. Really, that's one thing I'm really fortunate we weren't both artists, because I know artists two together a lot of times don't make it that well. Unfortunately, it's kind of the reality. It's you both are competitive, and you kind of can get into your relationship, and financially, sometimes it's not good having two artist incomes, but she basically works for the pottery, and then she does some side bookkeeping to make other bits of money. But mainly she just we work together, and she comes up with neat ideas for the business. So we love each other, and fortunately it's working out wonderfully.
Sounds like a wonderful and great relationship that y'all have and everything, so that's always great when you hear those positive relationship stories that are going in that positive kind of direction, like you said. So I'm definitely glad that y'all are having that kind of special relationship and all of that. Now, you said that you spent some time visiting other parts of the world in terms of learning your art and everything. So what was it like living in Italy and some of the other places, and what are some of the lessons that you learned from some of these artists, for lack of a better term, kind of like journeys or pilgrimages, I guess is the word I was looking for. So when you went on kind of these artistic pilgrimages, what were some of the things that you learned as you went to some of these rich artistic communities like Italy? And you mentioned another one that slips my mind right now.
That's fine. Yeah, that was England.
England, right.
In Italy, Italy was my first year away, and I went in there and worked with a bunch of sculptors, and I just basically immersed myself in the Italian, way of life, and that was just phenomenal. That's where I became an artist, I believe. I went there as a student and realized, I could absolutely do this as a life, and living with these people, that was really a special moment, and after that, going to England, that's really where I started to focus on the pottery aspect, where I went and stayed with potters who are out mainly in the countryside and just, working hard, work every day, just out in the workshop, constantly, improving their craft. And that's where I became a potter. And then moving to North Carolina directly from England is where I really honed my skills and worked under a master full time. So all of those experiences really accumulated into my time there with Mark Hewitt, which is a famous potter. He's an English-born potter who is in North Carolina, and that's who taught me basically all I know. And since then, I've kind of branched off back to a bit of my sculptural roots and putting that into ceramics now rather than stone. I used to do stone sculpture, but now that's going mainly into ceramics and clay.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of times, a couple of things come to mind is, who do you consider, in addition to Mark Hewitt, some of your inspirations, whether they're world-famous artists that are, like, known through history, or world-famous potters, or, like, some other local ones, but who are some of the folks that have inspired you in your artwork?
I'm really influenced by the Italian greats. Bernini is one, and Caravaggio. These are, like, I believe they were the 1500s. Michelangelo, who did the Sistine Chapel and was an amazing sculptor. Those, I love looking at how they did the work in stone, because just thinking about the time and the craft, and it's just phenomenal. So those are older artists. And then currently, obviously, like you said, Mark Hewitt, he's probably my biggest, inspiration. And then there's some painters that I really love. Micah Ofstedal is a guy who does some really neat things. He's a guy in Portland, Oregon. Makes beautiful surreal. He's kind of a science background, but does microscopic surreal, organisms. I think they're just phenomenal. And then in this area is rich of great potters who we all sort of feed off one another. So there's many names. It'd be hard for me to name them all, but we stay close as a group here.
Yeah, definitely is a rich potter community and a rich artistic community. My dad, Jim Lee, is definitely involved in the art world here more as a photographer, but then he's done some kind of like other type of artwork as well. But I know that sometimes when people think of potters, they sometimes think of potters in that same sense as they think of certain kinds of photography and certain kinds of drawings, which is that they see so many potters that they sometimes feel that it's sometimes almost an oversaturated market. So how do you deal with that when you see people that are thinking about the fact that it's not an easy field to develop, but it's a craft that a lot of people seem to get into, some as professionals like you, some as just regular amateurs and everything. But when folks talk to you about the proliferation of potters that are out there, what is your response to that?
Yeah, there's a lot of us here, especially in North Carolina. There is probably over 200 potters in this state alone. So the neat thing about this area, why there's so many, there's a couple of reasons. Is first the clay that was here. It's really rich clay deposits. So there's just like some of the best clay actually in the world is right here in North Carolina. Like my backyard, we've got clay that I use in my glazes. So that's one neat thing. But then there's so many patrons for the arts here in North Carolina. For pottery, people grew up with it. They continue to support it. So their parents kind of supported it, and they grew up with it. And I have these people bringing their young kids out, kind of growing up with pottery. So it's really an amazing thing that's happening here. And we sell thousands of pieces of pottery every year to people, and we see new faces every opening. So they just keep coming, and there's a lot of pots out there, but we're making one of a kind pieces. We're not making like just repeated. Every piece we make is sort of unique, and then when you get into my sculptural work, it's very unique and one of a kind work. So people have come to love that. And another thing that we do is with the kiln openings, we only have it available 3 times a year, so we don't have a retail shop, and that creates a demand for our work and more of a desire because it's not always available. Someone can't just come by the shop and pick out a piece. Usually, it's just at the opening. So that's another neat thing that we do.
Yeah, that sounds really great and everything. And I do have a great deal of respect for sculptors. I know here in Durham we've got Vega Metals, which does a lot of metal sculptures and has done a lot of public art and things of that nature. So I'd love to hear your thoughts around your love of sculpture as well as your just love of public art, because I do know that you're probably a big fan of public art as well, and a lot of times that is sculptures. So I was just wondering if you could share a little bit with our audience about your love of sculptures and your love of public art.
Yeah, that's something we've, recently been doing more and more installations in public places, which is, some hotels we started, and then there's a place in Winston-Salem at the convention center. When really a neat whole new line for us. I absolutely love, large works that are, at the North Carolina Museum of Art outside there, and going and seeing those and getting inspiration from that is something really feeds my creativity. So yeah, public art is super important. I've gotten into making kind of like sculptural seats. So it's a functional thing. Someone can go sit on it, or it can just be literally just a sculpture to look at, and that's been a neat new avenue for us. So, I'm a sculptor, but at heart, I believe I'm more of a potter now, because everything I make, I sort of want to have sort of a use for it, and that's where the seats for the sculptural pieces came in mind.
I can definitely understand that and everything. One of the things we've talked about on this show, as well as a couple of other shows that I've been involved with, is the importance of the arts to our public school system, and also how some people are feeling that with the pandemic we're not seeing enough support of the arts just in general, but definitely with people doing more of this virtual kind of space and everything. But I was just wondering, both here in North Carolina as well as in the nation and even globally, do you think that we're doing a good enough job of encouraging our young people to be involved in the arts fields?
Yeah, that's unfortunately we aren't. Yeah, that's something I've been pretty involved with, with a lot of like 4-H and Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. I encourage everyone to come out. We make pieces together because, man, I think I know a couple art teachers, and I think they're in multiple schools, which I just is unheard of for our generation because we grew up, and I remember kind of having clay class and painting. It was always there, and just fun. I loved it. That and recess, physical education were the only things that got me through school, I think. So it's a shame that we're just putting so much time on only science and math, and we're not doing a good job at that anyhow. So, I mean, at least bring fun the arts a little bit, and kids can excel at that,
I definitely agree with you on that and everything. And speaking of artists and everything, I do want to bring in a good friend of mine, Jason D'Amico, who is a musician here in the area and has definitely started off as a musician when he was 18 and everything. And I also want to bring in later on Fitz Kohler as well, who has definitely done a lot of work around running and being a survivor and all of that. But Jason, I'm glad that you've joined us and everything, and I know that you've done some great work. And we were talking about with my first guest, who is a potter here in the area living in Randleman, but you started off as a blues musician as a kid, because I remember you being a teenager when you first got involved in the blues scene and everything along that line. You're now well past those years of the teenage years, but you definitely have been involved in music for a number of years. So as I was having this conversation about art and the importance of art, how important do you feel art has been to your life, and particularly music? And do you think we're doing a good enough job of even teaching folks about music in our school system?
Yeah, Mark, hey, good to talk to you again. It's been a minute, right? A few months now. Yeah, well, I mean, the first part of the question, it's music's everything. I think this year especially has really kind of put that into perspective, because everything got turned upside down. We went from having full schedules throughout the year with pretty much the whole year figured out and touring or playing shows locally or, whatever. We had both. So we were going to go out of state. We were going to stay in state. And just like the rest of the entertainment community, everything completely got turned as a 180. And, it's everything. I think a lot of us had to really look in the mirror and ask ourselves, why are we doing this? Are we still going to continue to do this with all the unknowns in the world? And for me personally, I had no other choice. Music picked me. I really didn't pick it. And I actually working on a record right now. One of the lines is lyrically, I'm not sure if I chose you or you chose me, speaking to music specifically. And I have the same perspective with the school system, because I had some really incredible teachers and mentors in my youth that, I look in the mirror today at who I am, and I wouldn't be who I am now if it wasn't for that. And luckily, I had it in the public school system because of just some great decisions that were made either by the superintendent or the principal to keep the program running, or it was also in the private sector because I just had mentors that believed in me, that wanted to really pour into my life, and then also a product of great parenting. So it's a combination. I don't think one thing really can help someone who's a youth. It's a trickling effect. I think there's multiple aspects to it, and fortunately, I kind of had those multiple aspects. But it's still, you got to have the tenacity to move forward. And this year has just been extremely perspective, life-changing. So that's a lot to answer your question.
No,
Hopefully I kind of answered it.
No, you definitely answered the question and everything, and I appreciate it. And I want to learn more about some of the things that you're doing and everything, but we still got a little bit over an hour to go. So I do want to bring Fitz Collar into the conversation as well. So, Dean, if you can bring Fitz into the conversation, who is actually a tremendous survivor and has gone through a lot of things in terms of being a survivor of cancer and all of that, and had her earlier on the streaming podcast, and she just gave a lot of great insight as to what it takes to be a survivor. And she's written a book, and I just love the title of the book, and I wanted to share the title with the rest of the panelists, yourself included, Dean, as well as my great artist friends and everything. So definitely, Fitz, if you could tell a little bit about this amazing book that you put out there and your connection to the running community, because you've had the privilege of actually making announcements of major races around the country and around the world. So it's your turn to talk a little bit about what you've got going on, including that book with that amazing title.
Well, thank you. Hi, Mark, and hi, everybody. So I'm a fitness expert. I've been teaching for decades. I'm a master's in exercise and sports sciences, and I focus all of my efforts on efforts that make a mass impact. So I don't do anything in a gym or studio. Everything I do is large-scale, TV, radio, books, magazines. I also announce some of the largest, most prestigious running events in the United States, from Los Angeles Marathon to Buffalo, Philadelphia Marathon, Big Sur. I announced the Wonder Woman and Batman series for Warner Brothers. I have a large resume when it comes to the running industry, and I just adore the work. And usually my work takes me at least 30, 35 weekends a year around the country. In fact, I live in Florida, but I only announce one race weekend in Florida. All of my events are everywhere else. So, I love what I do, and I'm happy to help folks live better and longer. And December 2018, I went in for my annual mammogram, came out with a clean bill of health. Less than 7 weeks later, I was at a race weekend in my hotel bathroom, and I had an itch, and I rubbed my underboob, and I found it. I found the lump, and I knew I knew instantly it was breast cancer. And so one of the great pivot points in my story is that I didn't hem and haw about it. I didn't stall. I didn't put my head in the sand and avoid it like many people do. I instantly called the doctor, and within 30 seconds, I had an appointment for a few days later on a Monday. And, within a few days, I had the mammogram and the ultrasound and then the biopsy and the diagnosis. And I think within 3 weeks of finding that lump, I started chemotherapy, and life just, it spun out of control, but I took as much control as any human could. I was in 18 months, 21 rounds of chemotherapy, 33 rounds of radiation, several surgeries, and while life was spinning, I made some very distinct choices. And so my book is called My Noisy Cancer Comeback, and because I'm known as bossy when it comes to fitness, and noisy since I make my entire living on a microphone. And, I did cancer and I played by my rules. Yes, I sought out the best medical team and the best treatment. But I decided before I, had that first infusion, I decided I wasn't giving up my career. I wasn't giving up special time with my kids. And so no matter how bad things got, and they got bad, I was gray and I was bald, and I lived with the likes of a tequila hangover for 5 months solid, plus all sorts of other wonderful side effects, as you can imagine. But I never missed a flight. I never missed an event. I never missed an opportunity to stand at a finish line hugging thousands of strangers and welcoming them through like champions. And, it was an experience I would give back in a heartbeat, because who in the world would say, I do cancer over again? But I choose stubborn over surrender any day, and I'm really proud that I chose to forge on with my career and my family while going through the brunt of it.
Definitely. I think that's a great inspiration that you give to a lot of folks and all of that. Jason, coming back to you, and I definitely want to continue the conversation on a lot of different levels. But we were talking, and you heard that she's definitely a survivor and all of that. So if you would just talk a little bit about some of your own projects and some of the things that you've got going on, and just some of the ways that you have even just as a musician survived during these hard times and everything. Because earlier I had the Potter on, and he was sharing how he was surviving, including doing some very special sales, including one that is got a kind of background of Buy 2020, or Buy 2020 is the coupon code that he's giving, because a lot of folks are having that attitude that they want 2020 to be long gone and hopefully 2021 to be a much better year. So what are some of the ways that you are handling both what you've lost in terms of the career opportunities and moving forward into 2021?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's all perspective. For me, it's just trying to turn, and a lot of successful folks have said this over the years, so I'm not making this up. I'm stealing it from them, but it's basically any problem that comes along in life, you have to see it as an opportunity, not a problem. So, we try to do that as much as possible collectively as a business, and Nebo Entertainment, our production company, but then also me as an artist, which I always will kind of introduce myself as in any conversation, because it's really what I am at the end of the day, more so than anything else. So as that character, as that person in this life, that's kind of where we're at. Is what we have this huge problem in the world. What can we do to either make it better? And if we can't do it, because I'm not in the science community or anything like that, I have really no contribution to try and fix people in that sense. So, what do you do? And what we did was we just continued doing what we did. We just adapted. So the Jason D'Amico Show is a podcast that we started back in 2019. It started as a local outlet for artists to have a non-stifled time limit in a real formal interview locally in the Triangle, and before we knew it, within a few months, it burgeoned into a national and then an international show, primarily because of the pandemic, because it forced us to go to remote capturing. So that was obviously an opportunity coming from a problem, and then I've got a lot of music coming out in 2021, a lot of exciting stuff. I honestly wish, kind of like busting at the seams, I wish I could talk more about it. There's some really cool names involved with it, but for now I'll keep it under the hat. But just know that we've got some really cool stuff coming next year, and I don't believe those opportunities would have been possible without the world somewhat shut down. It just kind of changed it stirred the pot, so to speak, with contact and folks being available that wouldn't have been available originally, myself being available when I wouldn't have been available originally to do certain collaborations. So, just adapt. And we really don't know what next year is going to look like either. So it's, just seize the day, carpe diem. That's all I can say. And
that makes a lot of sense, Jason. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Sure.
sense, Jason. Definitely have to seize that day and everything. I definitely agree with you on that. One of the things that I've always really admired about you and your business and the whole business model and everything, and I'm sure that Fitz would get a kick out of this as well, is the fact that ever since I've known you as a performer, and I first met you when you were a child performer and everything, you've always definitely had it as a family model. So even though you are the star of the whole enterprise, it is strictly a family kind of model. Your mom is definitely very much involved in your career, as is your dad and other family members as well. So if you could just talk to Fitz, who's got two young kids, and I think they're teenagers, if I remember correctly, and everything. But definitely, I think that's a great model that y'all kind of created and everything. And of course, I think she's doing something similar with her family. But I'd love to hear your perception of what it's like to have that family connected to the business.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I mean, I'm grateful that you're asking me that in my mid-20s and not my late teens. It's definitely a different perspective now than it was then, But having a business degree, having my bachelor's in business, and now with a few years of really trying to build a brand, having that experience under my belt, what better partners could you have than your parents? If they really love you, and in the case that in mine, they do for sure. What better partners could you have? And they've really always looked out for me, always looked out for the best. They gave me the decision to make at 19. I was actually a sole proprietor. When I was 18, I was teaching music lessons on my own. Everything was going in under Jason D'Amico Music. And we kind of regrouped when I was 19, and they said, hey, some benefits that come along with being an LLC. What do you think about going down this road? And it just made sense. All the boxes were kind of checked. It made sense from a tax standpoint, a model standpoint, just, a lack of liability standpoint. So we did that. And now, going on 7 or 8 years of that, I think it was the right choice. So yeah, I would recommend it to anybody. I mean, just utilize as many assets as you possibly can. And that's something I would, again, I'm not going to take credit for that. I've read a lot of Gene Simmons books. That's out of one of his books. He was living with his mom when KISS was really starting to take off. He was saving up a bunch of money. And again, some folks don't have that as a possibility. But I know a lot of people that have that as a possibility, and they blow it because of ego problems or whatever. And, we all have to fight that. But whatever the situation is, if you have that as a potential positive, I mean, use it, use it and take advantage of it. And, someday my parents won't be here. So it's been nice having the time with them. And it's definitely a different perspective now than when I was younger.
That makes a lot of sense. Fitz, how much involvement does your husband as well as your kids have with the whole business that you've got? Or do y'all try to keep separate kind of like businesses and things going? Because I don't even know what your husband does or what the kids are hoping to do. I don't even know if they've got aspirations of being involved in that whole either television world or in the sports world. So, well, I guess that's kind of the question is, are they involved in the business and do they have aspirations of working in the same field as their mom does?
So my husband, I couldn't be prouder. He's a police lieutenant, and he's been doing that for almost 30 years. So he's got his own fantastic career that makes our family very, very proud. Besides teaching fitness and race announcing, I also own one of the largest school walking running programs in the country called the Morning Mile. So my children grew up taking part in it at their school. My husband used to take part. And, as far as that side of my business goes, we all ran and walked with the kids, and it was a blast. My son wants to go into film production. He's also an actor, so he'll go off on his own. But my daughter, she has very much the same skill set as I do, and she actually this year was hired to serve as my backup plan for races when I was double booked, because apparently I cannot be both in New York and California at the same time. So I've racked my brain trying to figure out how to teleport back and forth. But on occasion, I have races that, 2 race weekends, and I can't be at both. So I'm looking for a person who will take as much care of my athletes, providing as much fun and as much respect to the sponsors. Ginger became my quick backup plan. She's extraordinary on a stage, has incredible presence and a great connection with people. So she was hired for many events in 2020, and like all of us, that disappeared in a heartbeat when every event on the planet also disappeared in a heartbeat. So I do see Ginger having this do some backup race announcing for me as long as she wants to. And, she has her own career aspirations that are slightly different than mine. But yeah, at minimum, they take part when they can. When I announce a race within driving distance, I bring my family along, and they they run the 5K or the half marathon, and it's special to be able to welcome them across the start and the finish line.
Well, one of the things I love doing on my shows is networking people together and everything like that. So I think that the next time that you do a race and you need like a blues rock performer, you need to have them hire Jason D'Amico as one of the people for this race in either New York, California, or Florida, or wherever else those races might be. So, Jason, I'm putting you out there as somebody that she could bring to the races and all of that. You don't mind that, do you, Jason?
No, please. Take me out to California. I'd love to. I was out in Arizona earlier this year, and it was beautiful. So love the dry heat. Love the dry heat.
Well, what I can tell you is that I make zero decisions for any event I'm at. I'm just the voice. I show up. However, on occasion they ask for recommendations, and I'd be happy to pass your name along. And it's been a rough year for all of us. I mean, in the event industry.
Make sure you guys like what you hear first. Don't make any blind recommendations.
That's right. That's right. Hey, do you do an anthem? Every single race has the anthem played at the start. Do you play the anthem?
Oh, absolutely. We can do it Hendrix style. We can do it. Yeah, we'll talk later for sure.
Sweet. That's a guarantee. We always need an anthem.
So it could be an opportunity there that the anthem could be performed by Jason D'Amico and all of that. One of the things that I'm oftentimes curious about is people's inspirations. And you actually earlier, Jason, mentioned the folks from KISS, and I know you've definitely been inspired by a number of great blues performers. There have been some amazing folks in the fitness space and everything along that line. So I guess I'll start with you, Fitz. Who were some of the folks that inspired you? Because there was a time frame that I think every known actress, if not known actor, was out there with those different fitness products. So I know that there was a big boost in the fitness industry. I would argue probably in the 70s and the 80s, and then it kind of like bounced away, and then it's been kind of coming back and things of that nature. But who were some of the folks that got you inspired into fitness? And even coming back to what we were talking about with education and creativity, do you think that we're doing a good enough job of education and the exercise field? Because I personally think that we're not, but that's just my thoughts. Yeah.
So I could tell you that zero of the Hollywood actor musicians were an influence on me. I instead looked to Jack LaLanne. Jack LaLanne, the godfather of fitness, who was educated and compelling and passionate on the subject and truly changed lives. He had mass impact, and that's what I strive for. The household name status really provides you with the opportunity to affect people. And, so Jack LaLanne. And, who am I inspired by? There's not a lot of people within fitness who do it the right way. It's an interesting field with people. Anyone in the world can get their fitness certification or whatever out of a Cracker Jack box. There's no government regulation, which I'm going to start by saying I appreciate no government regulation, because the government stepping in almost never improves an industry. So I don't want Congress involved in. However, my industry is a little bit cockeyed. There's not a lot of education. There's a lot of people with, quote unquote, hot bodies that think they can tell everybody what to do. And usually what they end up doing is taking advantage of the consumer, selling pills and powders and diets and scams and snake oil of all sorts. So even some of the better known fitness professionals that you've seen on The Biggest Loser, et cetera, they've all stooped and sold diet pills, which are inherently ineffective and dangerous. So I always go with Jack LaLanne. He, to me, was close to perfect with his intentions, his knowledge, and his ability to make change.
Wow.
Is that not the response you expected?
I mean, no, I have to go by what you tell me. Mark, I guess he's going to be calling back in a second. But when you talk about those individuals, do you think they're going to change course and probably do things the right way, or
Never.
do they?
Nope. They care more about their bank account than they do care about, the average Joe or Jane that's just trying to lose a little weight, trying to feel better, trying to live longer. You got to start off with the information, and too many of them just aren't digging far enough, and they take the easy route, like keto. Nobody does keto for life, and the consequences of keto become pretty damn extreme if you stay on it long enough. And then you feel like you're suffering, and then you quit, and you go back and you gain all your weight. But they're not interested enough in, or I should say they're not respectful enough of other humans. When I had been teaching for 5-6 years before I went to grad school, and, I had the moment where I thought, if I'm going to make an actual career out of fitness and not just do it as a job, I need to know as much as possible, because I respect the spinal cord and I respect the heart and lungs. And if I'm going to take care of millions of people's hearts and lungs, I better know everything there is to know. And that's just not the case with fitness. So, there's a couple of people that do it right, but sadly the industry is a little bit, a little ugly sometimes, or ugly a lot.
So it's more of a chase for a money grab rather than,
I think so,
in the interest of helping individuals, lose those unwanted pounds and working to keep them off, which requires more than just a pill or just a certain type of diet.
There are no pills. Yeah, think about it this way. If there was an effective long-term diet, Oprah Winfrey would still be a size 10. If there was an effective pill, Oprah Winfrey would still be in her size 10 Calvin. But that pill doesn't exist. And if our favorite overweight billionaire doesn't have it, it doesn't exist. So too many people keep going to these, vitamin shops, and they talk to some minimum wage guy who just got a job there the week prior, and they say, hey, I want to lose weight. What do I do? And then that minimum wage employee who doesn't really know anything says, well, you got to buy these 5 products. Give me $200. And then they go home with the products, realize they didn't learn anything, gain anything, and then they go out and spend some money on some other hokey thing. It's just there's not enough people telling the truth. And to be honest with you, I think it's so important to tell the truth. That I do not accept money from a consumer. The only people who pay me are corporations. So, when I do work as a spokesperson or speaker for Disney or Office Depot or Oakley, they pay me. But they pay me to give information to the consumer for free. The same thing with the race organizations. They pay me to do a service, but when it comes to taking care of runners, I give out the information for free. If anyone goes to my website, fitsmith.com, right on the cover is an article called The Exact Formula for Weight Loss. It teaches people how to eat the right amount of the right food for the size they want to be. And that's it. They can have that guidance for free without giving me any money. And with that one article, they can go lose 100 pounds, 10 pounds, whatever they need, and live in that body they love forever. And they never have to exchange any money with me. Fitness, if you're a fitness professional, you should be paid for your time and your service, not your knowledge.
Right, and you said
couldn't agree with you more on that and everything. I had to do some technology stuff, so hopefully y'all can hear me and everything. But I'm good, the phone charge stuff and all of that, so hopefully they'll will clear up and everything. But one of the things that I've always admired has been folks that are fitness people that are even in the world of blues. And I know that one of the people that I admire amazingly, I'd love to hear Jason talk about him, is Buddy Guy, who is still out there at 80-something and still performing. And I think he's got to be one of the most fit individuals that I've ever met.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, man. I think genetics have a lot to do with it. I think a lot of it's also mindset. If you got the mind in the right place, then I think the body will follow, and as long as you stay active. I mean, I've been an avid gym person for over 10 years now. I started lifting in high school. I mean, it's been a saving grace for me. It's actually been very frustrating with the gyms, opening and then closing, opening and then closing. We actually, our neighbor just kind of hunkered down and got some heavy plates and an Olympic bar, and we're going to set up shop in his garage hopefully in the next week or two. It's great. I love it. So I don't know if Buddy was powerlifting in the 50s and 60s, probably not. But, you know, as long as I think the mindset's the first place, and then from there, you know, just staying active. But one thing that's been a big benefit for us during the pandemic is, you know, the gyms have closed. I was riding a bike all over the place. I was walking, getting a lot more cardio in, and it really just kind of cleans out the carbon out of the mind and out of the body, corporally speaking, you know, physically. So it's all connected. It's all connected. I don't know too much about it. My mom's got a background. She's an RN, has been for many years, military background as well with nursing. So, you know, I know a little bit from her, but other than that, personal experience, yeah, got to stay active. I think Buddy Guy definitely stays active and agile. So, and Chuck Berry was another one. I remember seeing Chuck Berry back when he was like, I don't know, mid-80s, and was just making it happen. So I think the blues has something to do with it too. The blues the music itself keeps you young.
No, there's no doubt about that. The blues definitely keeps you young and all of that. So I couldn't agree with you more on that, because I'm pushing getting close to 60 and everything. That'll come up for me in a year and a half, because it'll be July of 22. So 2022, I hit that magic 60 number and everything, but I still have that youthful attitude, and we'll try to have it until the end time and all of that. One thing that I'd love to hear from both of y'all about is, because I think it fits into both fitness as well as entertainment, is that too often I find that people understand the business aspect of things, but they don't understand. I should rephrase that. They don't understand the business aspect of things, but they understand whatever the industry is, whether that's fitness or whether that's the show aspect, but they don't do enough of the business aspect. And there's a reason they call it show business. There's a reason they call it the fitness business. But I find a lot of people know the fitness aspect to some degree, even though I agree with you, Fitz, that a lot of them don't know the true training that they should have, or they know the show aspect, Jason, but they don't know enough about the business aspect. So what are some of the ways that you would encourage people to be more engaged in learning about business? Because there's a reason they call it the fitness business and show business.
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah, if you want to start, go for it.
Yeah, I would say that with fitness, you know, it's interesting. My role as a fitness professional is to be a caregiver, to take care of other people. Sure, I'm bossing them around, but I'm a giver. I'm a service provider. So early on, it felt very uncomfortable to take money from my clients. Now, of course, you know, part of my goal there was to make a living, but for a very long time, as people handed me checks when I used to take money from individuals, when I was a personal trainer, it just felt really, really bad. And I finally had to come to the realization that, hey, you know what? They're not giving me money. They're investing in themselves. And I'm providing a quality service. And if I didn't do this, they probably wouldn't be achieving the success they were. So that was a big learning experience that, you know, business is different than doing your job. So whether you paint nails for a living, or you sing songs, or you teach fitness, or you do heart surgery, at some point you have to do business. I learned everything was negotiable early on. I also used to be afraid to ask for larger opportunities. So when I started teaching, early on when I was teaching fitness, I decided I wanted to make a bigger career out of it. I wanted to speak on a national and international stage and so forth, and I wanted to focus on mass media. But I was afraid to ask for opportunities. Now, mind you, I was afraid to ask for opportunities while competing as a full-contact kickboxer. So I would show up in an arena, dress out, put my little mouthpiece in, walk into an arena, into a ring, surrounded by thousands of people with another athlete who wanted to rip my head off, and I wasn't afraid of that. But I was afraid to ask for business opportunities. And one day, there was I had been the topic of a lot of magazine articles. You know, I was not only a skilled athlete, but I was good at training people to be a better kickboxer. And I was a feminine kickboxer, which was unique for the time. And they kept writing articles about me, but they kept screwing it up, and they kept spelling my name wrong, and they kept making up quotes. And so I'd go to the bookstore and get these beautiful magazines with a six-page color photo spread of me, and I'd think, wow, it's beautiful. And then I would get done with the article and be really irritated because they had butchered so much of the information. So I wanted to write the articles, but I was afraid. And finally, after one particularly brutal training session, when I had to fight against 4 different people in preparation for a fight, I left and got in my Jeep, and I picked up a magazine that was horrible. And then I had the revelation. I thought, you know what, dummy? You just got done sparring with 4 different people, all bigger than you, and you're afraid to pick up the phone and call and ask to write an article. And then I thought, well, if I call the editor and ask for this opportunity, what's the worst that can happen? And the worst that could happen was this guy could tell me no. There was no bleeding, no bruising, no public humiliation involved in that. So I went home, I picked up the phone, I called the editor, and I said, hey, Bob, it's Fitz, blah, blah, blah. He said, hey, Fitz, how you doing? Great. I said, I'd really like to write an article for you. He said, oh, I'd love that. That'd be great. And he said, well, how much do you need? And I thought, oh, my God. He not only said yes, but he's going to give me money. And so, I learned very early on to stop being afraid to do business. Whether I liked it or not, I was a business person. I had to ask. I had to communicate with people. I learned that, asking always felt a lot easier if I was creating a win-win scenario. But, business is tough. Business can be scary. But, if you practice, you can be good at that too.
Yep, and I'd love to hear what Jason's got to say as well. But I wanted to add something to that. I know that I've got a good friend of mine, and I've talked about it a couple of times on this show. But he oftentimes talks about what is kind of what you were referring to, Fitz, which is the brain drain. And he's in that event space, as am I. And we've done a number of events, and folks will oftentimes want our expertise, and they don't mind getting advice all day long. But then when it comes time to actually get the money, then that's when they either disappear or they don't want to give you the reward. They want the information, but they don't want the reward of actually paying you for that advice that you're giving them. And he calls it the brain drain. He says that there are a number of folks around here in this area we are that are involved in the brain drains and things of that nature. So I'm sure that you've even dealt with that yourself, Jason. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about show business and also about folks that want to get the expertise but don't want to pay you for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yes and no, because I guess I'm speaking from the positioning of a millennial. So social media kind of threw that all out the window 5 or 8 years ago, I'd say. I'd probably say in the last 4 to 5 years, specifically Instagram and now TikTok and I mean, YouTube has been around for 10, 15 years. So there's a lot of information out there. I mean, a lot of the things I learned practically and pragmatically came from those sources. They weren't even from my former college education or, either experience or through venturing out on your own and just figuring it out. So I bring that up in parallel to what you said, which is, yeah, sure. There's people that'll drain you and try and get information out of you. I've always had a low tolerance for that, but on top of that, also I've always been, I think, just a good-natured person, hopefully. So I've never wanted to really withhold any information from anybody, and I think all the greats were the same way. I don't think anybody was really. If you're coming from a win-win standpoint and collaborative instead of competitive, I don't really want to see the world like that. I think everybody's got their own unique niche in their own place. But yeah, I mean, you just got to know when to draw the line with some of these people. But I don't really run into that often.
Yeah, and what about the show business aspect? Because like I said, I've oftentimes amazed at the folks that are great at the show, but they don't necessarily have the business aspect down pat. And maybe it's more of an issue with well, I can't even say it's a age thing because I've seen it with both millennials and I've seen it with blues artists that are well into their 70s and 80s and jazz artists that are well into those ages. So other times they'll have the show side down, but they don't necessarily have the business side down. Is that something you've observed as well?
Oh yeah, I mean I battle it every day of my life. I mean this is coming from somebody who went to business school and grew up in the entrepreneurial type of household, especially my mom's side, 4 generations of custom building. My great-grandparents came over from Italy 100 years ago, had literally nothing to their name, came right off the boat, and built a multi-million-dollar business that branched off into some of my great uncles and my grandfather, and they kind of spread out and built houses in upstate New York. So, you know, it really comes down to value, and you know, if you're going to provide a value for somebody, you know, what's it going to be, and are you going to enjoy doing it? In the entertainment industry, there's so many gray areas, there's so many blurred lines when it comes to that and offering a service. You know, and it's just the lessons I've learned, some of the hardest lessons I've learned, you really can't, you don't know what they are until you're out of them. You really can't, until you have that life perspective and that experience to look back and go, oh, that was really stupid, or, you know, somebody told me I should have did this earlier on, or I should have did that. But then the artist side of you is pushing so hard to make a creative statement and to follow your vision quest and your passion. So eventually, I mean, what I'm finding now as I get a little bit older is that it's starting to balance out a little bit better, and hopefully, you know, there's a balancing act there, an equilibrium between pushing for the passion, but also being relative to, you know, providing that service for people and really finding that niche, but not compromising. So that's a real tightrope walk, and that's why the music industry especially is like a roulette wheel, because there's all of these factors at play. There's a really good book that is out there called Rockonomics. I read it earlier this year. There's a lot of statistical analytics behind this guy. I can't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but if you Google Rockonomics, it's a phenomenal book. It explains in great detail the stark difference between luck and work ethic. But in our industry, as you know, Mark, I mean, there's luck of the draw, and a lot of that is an intangible aspect that really comes across from. It could be, you know, like the Matthew McConaughey story where he's sitting in a bar and Don Phillips is drunk and they start having a good time, and you know, what are you doing tomorrow morning? Come by for an audition. I mean that, but he showed up. You know, so there's those opportunities, but he showed up, and I see that a lot in this industry. You just got to show up. I've had people tell me that 90% of the time, it's just about showing up. So, you know, it's not to be long-winded on it. It's a whole can of worms, but hopefully that kind of provides some value to some of the younger listeners out there. You know, just show up and, you know, provide value. Show up and provide value. Show up and provide value. That's all I can say. You know, don't take. Be a producer. Don't take. That's all I can really say to that.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate that advice. That's some great advice that you're giving and everything. Yeah. Now, another thing that's come up in both the sports and the entertainment world is folks using their platforms as a means to talk about whatever the social issue is, whether that's Black Lives Matter, whether that's issues around domestic violence, or a number of other issues that are out there, including even health issues and things along that line. So as both of you, I'd love to hear your thoughts as to whether you feel comfortable when athletes or entertainers do that, or whether you have an issue with them doing that. So I'll start with you, Fitz. What do you think when you see entertainers or athletes using their platform as a means to express their thoughts on various social issues?
Well, I can start by saying I don't do it. You know, I have some of the largest live audiences around, and I just don't feel it's appropriate because I work with so many brands. You know, I am the voice of the Los Angeles Marathon, and because of that, I also speak for ASICS, and I speak for their financial partner and the TV station. And I just don't think it's I I don't think it's fair or appropriate to bring my political beliefs onto the stage and attach those businesses to it. So I think it's wrong for me to do it, and I really dislike it when celebrities or, you know, people with a platform do it in their professional environment. And I don't care if you agree with me or disagree with me. You know, there's an actress that my husband, every time he sees her, even though she's a good actress, he's like, oh, I can't stand her. No, he can't stand her political views. And the stupid woman spoke out and lost half of your audience. You know, I think right now things are so volatile that you literally lose 50% of the population on any given subject if you express those views. You know, instead of really bringing music and people being focused on your wonderful music and singing and performing whatever, all of a sudden they look at you and they start thinking about this political thing you supported or didn't support. I do think it's professional suicide in some regards, so I personally don't like it. I want my singers to sing. I want my dancers to dance. I'm a race announcer. I announce races, and no one needs to know where I stand on certain matters. So I really do think it taints the experience for a lot of people, and yeah, it's a turnoff for me. It's a big turnoff. And I can say that I'm extremely politically active, but only in my private life.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about yourself, Jason? What do you think when you see musicians, and there have been some in both the blues and the jazz and the rock world that have put out their views, as well as some of the athletes, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a gray area because especially in the arts, we're here to communicate ideas and right. So that's the gray area there in itself. Me personally, I'm kind of in the same boat. You know, I was raised in a household where business is business. Don't talk politics or religion. So I've really maintained that same. Hopefully, I've maintained that same regiment throughout my own work. And you know, if I talk about something politically in a song or whatever, I really do it metaphorically. I don't call anybody out. I don't really. I mean, if I didn't tell you something had a political background or was perhaps charged in the political arena, nobody would know. You know, I like keeping ambiguity there because you're going to lose 50% of your audience either way. And that music's about bringing people together. You know, politics it seems to be the exact opposite of that. And I know Elvis said it the best, in my opinion, which was, I'm a musician, I'm not a politician. So that, to me, you just can't go wrong with that. And of course, in the private life, absolutely have the debates, talk with your neighbors, talk with your friends, talk with your family members, get involved, get in those engaged, respectful conversations that get a little heated, but get in those. I think this is a great time for us because there's a lot going on right now in the world, both nationally and internationally, and it's a great time for folks to really come together and sharpen up their arguments and see perhaps where things aren't holding up. But keep it private. I agree. Keep it private.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting that you say that about music because a good friend of mine, Zach Robertson, is a funk musician that lives here in North Carolina, but he's originally from the New York area and everything, and he's oftentimes talking about, and some of his friends say the same thing, that music and concerts are the one place, and I would argue probably even running is the same thing, where we really don't know people's political attitudes or what their thoughts are. There's just one common goal and everything, and that's rooting against the other team that you're competing against, or the other kind of like sports allegiance, whatever that sports allegiance is. So like if you're going to a great concert, if you're going to hear the Rolling Stones, you don't know if that person sitting next to you is gay, straight, Baptist, Jewish, or what they are, and you probably could care less. You just want to groove with the music with them. And if you're at a sports venue, then you only care that they're rooting for the same team that you're rooting for, but you could care less any of the other divisions that might happen, because you might care if they're a Ravens fan as my buddy Dean is if they're rooting for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you might go against the person rooting for the Steelers if you're playing the Ravens.
Right. And may I add one quick thing? I mean, again, if you're being paid to provide a service or a product, whatever it is, you're being paid to provide that service or product, period. So anything else that gets kind of thrown into the mix there is it's false advertising, and it's not fair to your purchaser or your client or your customer. It's just basic business 101. But again, it's the arts, man. The arts is everything's up for grabs in the arts. But that's my personal opinion.
No, I definitely hear you, and I hear that a lot of people are also concerned about the funding for the arts, because I know that that's even been a topic of debate, including like whether the Kennedy Center or a number of other great organizations should get funded. I personally think that they deserve the funding and think that they need to get even more funding than they've been getting. But I know we're in the middle of a pandemic, and a lot of those arts organizations are struggling. But I do hope that they'll be able to get through these difficult times, because there are a number of local arts organizations here in Durham, as well as national ones and international ones, that are struggling on a regular basis. I was going to change the topic because I did not think I realized, Fitz, when you were on the streaming podcast about your kickboxing background and everything. And I was just curious your takes on what do they call it? Mixed martial arts, because I know that became very popular and that is involved in kickboxing. And I was just wondering your take on that as a sport, and also your take on wrestling, because I know that when my grandfather was living, you could not turn on the TV to anything else if wrestling was on, because he was a big wrestling fan. My dad actually did a cartoon at a radio station that he was involved in, showing that wrestling was actually, had more of a show business aspect and wasn't necessarily a true sport, even though I do find that even if you're doing pratfalls, you have to do them correctly and all of that. So I would argue that it definitely involves some serious exercise, and we've seen even more women involved in wrestling as well. So I would love your take on both mixed martial arts and professional wrestling with your kickboxing background and fitness background.
So I can tell you that the MMA fighters that I know, the ones I even don't know, it's an incredible sport, and you have to be very diverse in your skill set. So I was a stand-up fighter. The most interesting thing I did beyond striking people and using great defense was a foot sweep from the outside in. So, and a spinning back fist. So that was still a strike. The MMA fighters, they have to be adept in, punching, kicking, grappling, taking people down. They have so much that goes into it. So I certainly admire it. And the bodies are extraordinary. It's muscles everywhere. The one thing I'm not as thrilled about with MMA is, I watch a fight because I want a spectacular knockout, whether it's a punch or a kick to the head. I love a big knockout, and I don't enjoy a tap out. I think tap outs are kind of boring. Sometimes it looks like brothers wrestling in a kitchen giving each other wedgies. So, and I don't say that to insult those athletes because I think they're great. I just prefer a stand-up fight. So, when I have a choice, I would watch boxing and kickboxing first, which is far less popular now. Dana White and UFC have done incredible things, making MMA the most exciting sport in the world right now. So good for them. As far as wrestling goes, there's a difference between, international rules wrestling and then entertainment wrestling, both, as you say, very, very athletic and, more power to the ones. I think those that are doing entertainment wrestling are making a hell of a lot more money than those that are wrestling even in the Olympics. So, again, kudos to all of the above for, being so strong and flexible and capable and dynamic. It's interesting, the opportunities we see in sport now, right? The only one I don't get is curling. Curling I still don't understand. I don't understand with the sweeping. And other than that, I love all sports.
Yeah, it sounds like that. I actually had a gentleman that was involved in both curling and hurling, so he knew both of those sports. But, of course, he was from the Scottish area, and I was like you up there going like, I don't quite get it and everything along those lines. But one of the things I have noticed, and I was just wondering your thoughts on this, is I have seen more. One of them, of course, being Muhammad Ali's daughter and everything. But it's like I alluded to earlier, it does seem that with the entertainment wrestling and with even regular boxing, there are more women that are getting involved in these sports. So what is your take on that? And are you a fan of women involved in some of those, what I used to in the old days were considered more man sports, but now even women seem to be very much engaged in these sports. So I was just wondering, as a fitness person, what is your take on women getting involved in the boxing and entertainment wrestling?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's funny to me, and I'm no feminist, and I say that very confidently. I'm no feminist. I love men as equally as I love women, and I believe we have equal rights and equal opportunities. So yeah, I don't ever prioritize women over men, but I could tell you that I look back at sports 60 years ago where women weren't allowed to compete in basketball, and I think, what the hell, you know? So the fact that I had the opportunity to compete was pretty great. You know, when I was competing, I was a stronger kicker, but I would have loved to compete in the Olympic Games, and I would have dropped my kicks to just compete with my hands as a boxer if there was an opportunity in the Olympic Games for women. And there wasn't. So, you know, that was fine. Is it fine? Maybe not. But I love that women do have whoa, what's going on there?
Well, that was our 10-minute warning, but you're still good.
Okay. But, yeah, I love that women have opportunities. And, you know, when I was fighting, there weren't so many of us. So, you know, competition opportunities were slim because not only was I a female, but then I fought at about 111, 112 pounds. And so I tell people, think about all the women you know that wear a size 0, and then think, oh, which one of these women are going to fight? And it just wasn't a lot. Now it's far more popular, and the girls that are going to battle, they do have so much more opportunity for regular fights. You know, I really struggled to have any fight within, you know, even months of each other just because there was no competition for me, or there was rarely competition. So I think it's great. And you know what? The women are just as skilled than the men. I think they're a little more calculating. You know, I think I like watching the women compete. So yeah, I don't care. Men, women, somewhere in between. If they wanna slug it out, I'm willing to watch.
Yeah, because it's interesting you say that, because I've got a cousin that played in high school many years ago, because she's actually got grown kids herself, and she played basketball over at Jordan High School, which is one of our local high schools here in this area. But in talking to her and talking to her dad, who's a coach and has been a coach in different levels and everything, I think he's coached on both the college level and played in the Canadian League way back when and everything. But we did find that a lot of times the women's basketball game, you're talking about women's basketball, was the more fundamental game in terms of like being fundamental to the true nature of basketball. You know, there's less dunks, less of the spectacular plays, so it's more of the true fundamental nature of what basketball is supposed to be about. So I would argue that the women's game is probably a more fundamentally sound game.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, you know, our opinions, everyone's got one, right? But I love sports. I love athletes. I love absolutely anyone and everyone who gets out and tries, whether they're fighting in a ring or hitting a baseball bat or swinging a baseball bat, or they're running. You know, my events, I've got some of them 30,000 people come out to participate. And so, you know, maybe the top 10% run the whole way, and then the 80% run and walk. And then there's these awesome 10% of people that are, look at them and you think, oh my gosh, they're so overweight, or they're so out of shape, or they're so old, or oh my gosh, all of their joints are wrapped up, or they're wearing braces, but there they are plugging along. They're gritty, they're determined, and they go the same distance that our champion went. And it might have taken them a longer time, but holy cow, it's amazing to see someone who's 400 pounds or 95 years old run or walk a full marathon. You know, it just anyone who's willing to give it a go, put on the shoes or the gloves or the sports bra and get to work, they all have my respect and adoration and enthusiasm.
No, I can definitely understand that. And I have a great deal of respect for athletes as well. But I also have a great deal of respect for anybody that wants to attempt kickboxing and all of that and any of those other martial arts, whether it's boxing, whether it's wrestling, the entertainment version, as well as the more Greco-Roman kind of version and everything. So I have great respect for all of those kinds of sports and everything. And even when I ran track, and like I told you earlier, I was a bad track runner, but I did admire the folks that did like the shot put and the discus and a number of those other kind of more weight kind of exercises. So I'm thinking that, Dean, I don't think that you want to take Fitz on in a kickboxing battle, even though she's a cancer survivor. I think she might take you down.
I don't do high impact sports anymore. I just do low impact things. So I wouldn't even be trying to take that on.
we could have a low impact fight. We could figure it out. Put on really big soft gloves and punch each other in the face. How's that?
You gotta have extra padding on the ground too, because falls and my joints don't do too well.
Perfect.
So we're gonna have some extra padding and things of that nature. I don't know. Jason might take you on. He's a millennial. He might take you on in one of these battles and everything because he's a millennial and they've got high energy.
No, I get my ass kicked. No way.
So you're not going to take it on either? Jason's like, I am not messing with this lady. If she's might be closer to my mom's age, but I think that she could still take me down.
Yeah, I think so. Because experience. I mean, look, I just don't have the. I don't have the years. I haven't. Yeah, who knows? I don't know. But I don't. I'd get hit. I'd definitely get hit. Fighting is not my forte. It's not my forte.
I understand that. I agree. I believe that some of the great 60s and 70s musicians used to talk about, I'm a lover, not a fighter, and I definitely agree with that kind of mentality. I think that's a great mentality to have and everything. So I definitely agree with that. And one of my favorite songs is John Lennon's Imagine, where we're trying to imagine a better world. And the scary thing is that song was made many years ago, but it's still relevant to this day. And there's a lot of other songs like that are still relevant to this day. But I definitely think that John had the right idea when he was imagining a world of a utopia and a world of peace. So, like I said, we can do the sports and the fighting as a form of entertainment, but not in this kind of negative aspect that is oftentimes used and all of that. So I think he had the right idea.
Yeah, it's.
But what is he?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. What were you gonna say? No, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, don't worry about it. Go ahead.
No, one of the things I always do at the end of the show and everything is I always try to get people to give their positive thoughts and their wishes of positivity that they would like to share with the world. So if you've got any positive thoughts that you would like to share, including whatever that thought was, Jason, then we're going to wrap up with the last 5-6 minutes or so, and then Dean will say where this whole thing can be heard in the re-airs and all of that. So I'll start off with you, Jason, then I'll come to Fitz and everything. But what is some words of positivity or something that you would like to share with the world that is listening? Because we do have folks that are listening from around the country and around the world.
Sure. I mean, not to sound, really, hopefully this doesn't sound morbid or something. You only live once. I think this year has put a lot of that. It's reinforced that perspective. Real quick on the cancer thing, that's incredible that you were able to survive. My best friend. Believe it or not. So that family's really gone through a lot. There's not a day that goes by where I'm not still influenced and inspired by my friend Alex. He was just a total light in this world. So, I just kind of bring that up to parallel with what you've asked, Mark, which is to, do some advice out there, positive light out there. And I mean, that's all you can do is just maintain that perspective that you really don't know how long you're here for. And while you're here, just do what you want to do while you're here. Don't wait. That was one of the big things that we talked about at his funeral. He never waited. and we all kind of carry that legacy with us as his friends and as his family. And I've made huge strides in my life with that mentality. So, I owe my best friend for allowing that to carry with me. So that's how I would say to any of the young people out there: don't wait. Don't think that you're, anything that's insignificant, any thought patterns that make you feel inferior, don't pay them any attention. Stay in prayer, keep your faith up, and stay positive. Stay positive, and it's all about perspective.
No, I definitely agree with you, and sorry to hear about that loss of your friend and everything. Fitz, what are some of the words that you would like to share in terms of words of positivity and words of encouragement and things that you can leave folks as we're heading into 2021?
Well, I couldn't agree any more with Jason. I mean, you got to treat each day like it counts, because it does, but don't wait until you hear those words, "you have cancer," or until you get hit by a bus to start prioritizing your health. Nothing makes you value health more than when someone says you're unhealthy or you're injured or whatever. You will never walk again, for example. So, my attitude is prepare your body for battle today. That means you start watching what you put in your mouth. You know what? If you're overweight, it's not because someone came over to your house, opened up your mouth by force and shoved in bad food. You've done this to yourself. So you have to take ownership, responsibility, and you have to undo that by starting to eat wisely. So watch those eating habits. Exercise often in a variety of ways. You do not have to kickbox. You do not have to run a marathon. But you do have to do something that makes you sweat. And it could be whatever activity of your choice. Just get started doing something. You got to sleep, and you got to remove the cranky people from your life. And, sometimes we say, well, my doctor's responsible for our health. No. The doctor does not come to your house at night, sneak in your room, lift up your sheets and peek at your body to see what is or isn't going on. You have to be aware. You've got to bring your body to the doctor for those annual exams of all sorts, your pap smear, mammogram, colonoscopy, prostate exam, whatever it is. You've got to have them look, your skin exams. And then when you experience red flags, you have to say something. That's what I did, and I saved my own life because I did not dilly-dally. My cancer was very aggressive. It was on the move. It was eager to take me out. And if I would have waited even to my following mammogram, y'all would be talking about me instead of to me. So if you focus on your health today, if injury or illness strikes, you will be far more likely to recover or rebound quickly and efficiently if you were healthy to begin with. And, I'm living proof. I finished chemo May 11th, and then June 12th, I ran a Spartan 5K obstacle course, and then a month later, I did a triathlon. Now, mind you, I was dead last. I struggled through each event, but I did it, and I was doing a hell of a lot more than my friends who had not just had chemo. So health matters. Start today, and if you want free advice, join me at fitsness.com. I'm at Fitsness on YouTube, on Instagram. I have tons of free little videos for you to use and solid advice that's based in science that will help you get where you want to go. And reach out, not only follow, but reach out and say hi. I'd love to help anyone and everyone who's listening.
I appreciate that. That's some great advice. As you were saying, I was actually thinking about my younger brother who's at the beach right now with some of the other family members and friends and things of that nature. But I remember he ran twice those mud races, or those kind of like multiple dimension races where you bicycle and you run and you do a variety of other things. I think there might be swimming in those and everything, but they are kind of like the more rugged versions of them and everything. So they're not quite the natural triathletes, because I think that they're shorter and everything. But I don't think he completed either race, because I want to say that both times he did them, he managed to break a bone and everything. So he's given up on that, but possible. I think that he still does some other forms of exercise.
So much fun. It's such a good time. You know what? When I go out to exercise, once I retired from kickboxing, I'm just all about a good time. I'm never trying to win. I'm just out for some athletic adventure. And, athletic adventure is the name of the game for me. I will do almost anything to have some laughs, and especially if I'm really bad at it, I want to give it a try.
Sounds like some great advice for more people to have. And I definitely agree that as people are dealing with various health issues, whether that's breast cancer, whether that's MS, whether that's a number of other ailments that are out there. I think one of the great tragedies was that actor that passed away that had fought and lost his battle with prostate cancer and everything. But he was definitely encouraging people to do what you said, which is get out there and do those tests on a regular basis. So we have to get out there and do those tests, whether it's skin tests, whether it's prostate, whether it's for the ladies. And actually, I think that the breast cancer is actually something that they say guys are supposed to check as well, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely.
I think I did read that somewhere.
Yep, absolutely. Men are susceptible as well. In fact, I have a friend who had breast cancer at 19. Makes no sense, but he did.
Wow. So we've got to check all of the things going on in our body on a regular basis. So, Dean, do you want to tell folks where they can hear this great show as we're getting ready to wind down? I think we've only got about a minute or two, but if you can tell them where they can hear this rerun and everything, as well as some of the other shows, and any words of encouragement that you would like to give, because I think we've heard some amazing words of advice from our Potter that was on earlier, as well as from Jason D'Amico, my longtime musician friend, and from my new friend, Fitz Collar. So hopefully she'll pop back every once in a while and share some other advice with us about fitness whenever she's available and not calling racist. But what are some of your thoughts as to what you've learned on this particular episode, and also any ways that you can let folks know where they can hear this amazing show?
Well, we thank our guests for all the informative insight that they provided to us on this show. We greatly appreciate you. We'll be checking out the website and see if we can knock some dirt off our shoulders going into 2021. It's actually Straight Talk with Dean and Mark, Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to catch our replays on the Skyhawk Radio Network tomorrow afternoon and Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m. And if you miss those, we do have replays on Radio Public, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, Castbox, Podfollow, Deezer, Jay Savin, and right here on Blog Talk Radio, where we are part of the Level Podcast Network, coming into 2021, starting a new decade off with the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause, the Chef Gang Radio Show, Funk from the Front Seat, Funk Music with Zach, Learning Unwrapped, Let's K-12 Better, Marketing with Russ, hashtag Russ Selfie, Mona Shakes and the Minority Reports, Mullings, Music and Memories with Mark Lee, the Online Dinner Party with Mark Lee, the Reinvention Road Trip, She's on Call, the Just Podcast, the Mark Lee Show, the Spin It Social Hour, Virginia Interfaith Live, and WNC Original Music. Like I always say, when you walk outside your front door, it's showtime and the world is your stage. Just make sure that people are not watching the rehearsal. With that being said, episode number 257 is in the books. 2020 is done. 3 more days and we bring in a new decade. Cheers to 2021. Happy New Year. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Stay away from people that got the cough and everything else. Put the mask on, and let's start off 2021 real strong. Dean Geronimo's out. Y'all have a go.
Definitely great advice that you were giving. Very powerful advice. I'm out of here as well because I've got to go find me some food because I was just sitting there thinking to myself, I'm not eating my dinner today. So I need to get out there and get some good food because I don't think there'll be any exercise at 9 o'clock tonight. But I'll need to do like Fitz was saying earlier and get out there and get some exercise. So I might have to do that on tomorrow. And y'all know I'm going to be out there trying to recruit some more great guests for 2021. I think that we had a spectacular 2020 and learned a lot from a lot of great guests during the course of the year. But, you know, we can't rest on our laurels. We got to go ahead and do another smoking job for next year. So I've got to get out there and put out some more great guests because, you know, we came out with fire on this last episode on this particular 2020. So I got to go out there and make sure that we start 2021 with some equal fire. Don't you think so, Dean?
Yes, indeed.
So on that note, both me and Dean are out of here, and we will catch y'all next time, because in 2021, we're going to try to bring you some more great content with some more powerful messages for folks involved in everything from the creative world to activism to education to sports to a number of other fields that we can find folks in. So, by the way, if you are interested in being a guest on the show, you can always reach out to me at bluesradio@gmail.com. That's bluesradio@gmail.com. Always looking for great guests that are willing to share their inspiring stories. I know that me and Dean are looking forward to some great conversations in 2021. So one of you may be listening right now, and you need to be writing down that email. That's bluesradio@gmail.com. Reach out to me. Let me know that y'all want to be a guest, and we'll definitely get you on in the year 2021. And on that note, we're out of here.